Hello and welcome to the RA Group Daily Webcast. Every weekday at 3:30 p.m. we host a daily webcast where our panel of experts discuss a wide range of topics to help you survive and thrive during the lockdown. On Monday, we will have Adrian from Real Kombucha and Luxy speaking to us all about gut health. Today, though, I, Stephanie Robertson, wine and service trainer for the RA Group, will be taking you through food and wine matchings during lockdown. Please do send through your fave lockdown dishes and we can pair them with wine or any other drinks. Hi guys, how are we doing? Sorry, I think we're having a slight technical difficulty, and there we go, and we're back. So this afternoon, we will be talking all about food and wine matches and everything to do around all of that. So why don't we get started with a little bit of theory around some of the food and wine matching pairings that we could do. So there are a couple of theories to it where you can either pair wines with things that are very similar flavors or things that are very different, sort of complementary flavors, I would say. Now, I do know that there is far too much fuss made around trying to pair the perfect wine with the perfect food. I mean, choosing wine is complicated enough anyway. So what we really want to do is make sure there is a pairing, but also that we are actually going again, you know, with what we like as a person too. So with complementary pairings, you really kind of want those to be a little bit separate. So kind of like coconut and lime, I guess, as a flavor. Or if we're going towards something very similar, then it's beef and mushroom. So what's more important, I feel anyway, than the actual color of wine, because I know that we say we need to match red wine with meats and white wine with fish, but we're just going to throw that out of the window, aren't we, Sonia? Completely out of the window. Yeah. Because what's really, really important is the weight of the wine actually in your mouth and how it feels around your mouth, rather than you know, really focusing on, no, I actually have to drink this red wine with this meat, even if I really hate it. So if you're looking at something delicate, say like burrata or goat's cheese or a little poached fish, you want a fairly delicate wine with it. So maybe you want sort of a Chablis or a light Sauvignon Blanc, even a little cheeky rosé, a Pinot Noir, you know, a Cinsault, or even a little Beaujolais if you're looking for something a little bubbly, gummy and fruity. But then on the other hand, if you're eating something that's a bit fattier, really, really rich in flavor, then you want to go for the slightly bigger wine. So yes, that sort of makes you think of red wines, but maybe you could go for a oak Chardonnay or something along those lines as well. Now, there are the 6 flavors, well, the 6 tastes, I guess. I mean, Davidson's will be able to take us through each and every flavor profile, I think, and tastes very well. But yes, we've got the 6. So we've got acidic food, we've got the acid, we've got sweet, we've got salt, we've got spiciness, fat, and then the bitter flavor. And each one of those things in the food will actually impact how we taste the wine, or vice versa. So with sort of that acidic foods in high acidity, it will make lower acidity wines feel really sort of flabby and weird and just not really that great. So you'd want to match more with a high acidity wine there. With chili, I know this is one that I think about a lot because I eat a lot of curry. So spiciness. The spiciness in food can actually make you feel the heat of the wine a lot more, the heat of the alcohol. So what you want is something that's a little fruity, a little bit sweet almost. So like maybe a Gewürztraminer or, you know, a Riesling.
Sonia. question, Steph. So Nix has said, what food would you suggest with a Viognier? I hope I've said that right. Sometimes the aromats are difficult to pair with.
A Viognier, yes. The aromatics are, well, you know, it's the mouthfeel with a Viognier as well, because you do have that little bit richer mouthfeel. So, I mean, if we're looking at food and wine pairings in lockdown, like specifically, and I'll go through a couple of the matches shortly, I would definitely say something even like a light pizza, something along those lines, something with a little bit of body, maybe a nice little pasta dish. That would be very tasty, yeah.
We've also got somebody that said, you mentioned spice. So what would you go for with spicy food? Red versus white, dry versus sweeter? That's a good question.
That is a good question. So, I mean, I'm a massive red wine fan. So I would probably, you know, I have drunk red wine with spicy food before, but it really does sort of pick up that heat. So if we're looking for a perfect match, I'd go a white wine, something a little bit sweeter than the drier side. So something a little bit along the lines like the Gewürztraminer I mentioned, or a nice Riesling from Alsace or Germany even. Just that it's got a little bit of sugar.
I don't know what a Riesling doesn't go with, to be honest with you. I think it's delicious.
That is also glass.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what I've done is, I know that, you know, we're in a lockdown, and it can be pretty hard to find some wine matches with the food we might be eating right now. So what I have done is a couple of I picked my personal favorites and done some wine matches for you along those. So we'll start with a little curry takeaway. Like I said, yes, we can match a Gewürztraminer with it, but more interestingly, if you're not into wine, I would say an IPA would be fantastic, because it's got that little bit of a fruity element, and that'll go really, really well. It'll pair great, because some of them do have a little bit of a mango feel about them, like a chutney.
Yum.
Yum. And then I know I've been eating this a whole bunch of, at the moment, is baked beans on everything, be it on toast, be it on baked potatoes. So it's a staple, I think, in everybody's household right now. And I would say 100% we want to go with something like a Grenache or a Garnacha. So either a Spanish or an Australian one.
I love the idea of having a glass of wine while you're having beans on toast. I think that's epic.
It's not as bad as that. I've once had Weetabix on a night with a bottle of red wine, which is probably not good pair either.
Well, I mean, like I said, each to their own, right?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. We do have another question from Nick saying, what's your favourite go-to wine at home? So just in general. Just in general.
I have to say that at the moment, it is a lovely little Vino Verde that I picked up from Jascott's. I've run out, so I'm going to have to place another order. But it's just so, I mean, with it coming up for summer, it's so light, it's so easy, it just sort of goes down. And also, it's quite light on the ABV as well. So you don't feel like you're drinking a 15% red wine all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the red wine side, I don't know, I love a Pinot Noir. So I've sort of been jumping between a couple of the Pinot Noirs at the moment.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So back to sort of the flavor profiles and that kind of thing. So with a rich food, so if we are looking at a bit of a richer dish, say like a butternut soup with a bit of cream in it, what you are wanting to look for is something that's like a palate cleanser. So the rich food will coat your mouth. The wine that you drink, you'll want it a little bit higher in acidity, so it does clean your mouth. So each time you take a bite or a sip, your palate's a bit refreshed. So I would say sort of like, I'd say an oaky Chardonnay, but one with sort of a nice balance to it, a nice acidity. So it does sort of give that feeling of making it nice and fresh and clean. Now with very strong flavored bitter food, well, like really pungent, I guess, like a Gorgonzola, you would sort of, any blue cheese really, you would want more of a higher acidity once again, but then a real good sweetness. So a lot of the sweet wines out there, like a Sauternes or a Tokai, really does have that fantastic balance where you do have the sweetness and then the acidity. And once again, that's just about, you know, the refreshing feeling on your palate as well.
Awesome. We do have, so Seafood Lover has said Porto red wine from Lidl is perfect. Have you tried that, Steph?
Yes, I have. I've had several bottles of that one. I'd actually have to say, I know in a webcast a couple of weeks back, somebody asked me where was my favorite supermarket to buy wine from, and it's still Lidl.
There you go. And Celia's written in and just said, and cheese. Maybe she's asking about the pairing with cheese. Not sure.
Cheese? Ooh, I mean, it really depends on what kind of cheese you're going for. I would definitely say that if it's the blue cheese, you do want the Port or the Sauternes, those sort of sweeter wines. But if we're going a little bit harder, I mean, a goat's cheese will pair really lovely with a Sauvignon Blanc, like I have here, a little Sancerre. But if you're looking for a wine that kind of goes across the whole board, I'd say a really nice Bordeaux blend. So that would be like a Merlot Cabernet Sauvignon blend, you know, a nice red, because it's got that versatility to be able to capture most of the flavors.
Awesome. We've got tons of questions, so I won't stop your mojo unless you want to do the questions now.
No, we can do the questions. Bring them.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we've got somebody asking. I was going to ask about Vinho Verde, which you said you talked about earlier. Good with curry. What's your fave Pinot Noir at the moment? So I think that's 2 questions. What curry goes with the Vinho Verde that you're drinking, and what's your fave Pinot Noir at the moment?
Perfect. So Vinho Verde with a curry. It doesn't quite have the fruitiness that would be like perfect for a very spicy curry. So maybe one of the milder types, like maybe a mild korma, something along those lines. If we're looking, maybe a seafood korma, because I know Vinho Verde goes very well with seafood. It's typical to Portugal.
Yes.
And that actually, side note on that, where the wine is from, typically it will match the local food as well, because often the winemakers do go hand in hand with the local food, which I find fascinating around the world. My favorite Pinot Noir. Right now, what I'm enjoying is the mealess Pinot Noir from Stellenbosch, South Africa. Maybe I'm a little biased being South African. Could be the case. But I do really like a Burgundy Pinot. Less favorite, you know, being a real sort of favoritism, less New Zealand, more old world, I would say, in my Pinots.
Sounds good. I love a Pinot Noir as well. I don't know the detail of it. Like, if I see it on a menu, that's what I'll ask for, because I know I generally like them. But I don't know which one I like best, to be honest. And we have got a question from Anonymous. What can you pair with chocolate?
Chocolate. White chocolate you could pair with champagne. Milk chocolate, I would say you could even go with a whiskey for a milk chocolate. I quite like that. And then a dark chocolate, I would say maybe a little rum, or even one of the stronger red wines. Nice. So going completely off piste with the drinks now.
Ben's asked if you could recommend a couple of good English red wines. That's a good one.
That is a good one. So English red wines are a bit difficult because we don't have the heat or the sunshine here to actually grow some of the more traditional grape varieties that we see around the world. But the one that I have, there's two vineyards that I've actually tasted in the last couple of years that the red wine's actually palatable, and I would drink it myself. That would be the Mount Vineyard in Sevenoaks, and then Three Choirs in Gloucestershire. They've got some pretty good reds. I mean, we're better at our whites and sparklings at the moment due to the climate here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Steph, I've got a question for you here. So when I'm trying to be really healthy, I've got a dish that I really like that's under 500 calories, which is smoked haddock with chickpeas, and then I stuff some chopped tomatoes in there and sprinkle it with coriander. So I'm kind of asking what would be good with that, that's a much sort of healthier wine, if that's possible.
That's a good question. Fair. So the smoked and the, so I would say maybe a slightly oaky white wine. So maybe sort of, oh, that's a difficult one. I would say definitely sort of maybe an oak Chardonnay, maybe more from the Australia side of things, because they sort of oak it a little bit bigger. But I mean, you're never going to find like a super healthy, tasty wine, I guess.
I think you need to look at the glass size, Caroline. I think that's going to help you out.
What, should I not be drinking a bottle-sized glass each time? Is that wrong? No, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love it. We've got loads of questions coming through, Steph. Wow. Say, this is one from Nix. So a lot of people say that they don't like wine, a bit like those who don't drink coffee. What would you suggest as a good entry level for somebody that's new to wine? What would you suggest?
All right, so new to wine. I mean, what I would probably ask, if you know, coming from a point of view, if I was serving the customers, get a little bit more information around their flavor profile and what they like to eat or drink. But a nice entry wine, I mean, Pinot Noir. I know I'm banging on about Pinot Noir, but it is a good entry level red. And then sort of the slightly sweeter white wines like the Rieslings and the Gewürztraminers, fruitier. I think they're really accessible. And the one thing I know people struggle with when they first start drinking wine is the acidity and the tannin, sort of, because they are a lot higher than in coffee and tea as well. You feel them a bit more, especially because of the alcohol. So I would say, yeah, a little bit of a fruity and then a lighter red.
Nick has also, which might tie in, it might not. Nick's written in and said, if buying wine, could you explain the difference in quality when you spend, say, £5 versus £10 versus £20 a bottle? Which prices should you start at? Is a £5 bottle really not worth buying, as the quality will be poor? What would you say?
That's a really good one, Nick. Thank you. So it's very interesting. I did a judging panel a couple of weeks back. Well, a couple of weeks, it's more like months now, for the Sommelier Wine Awards. And some of our actual panels of tasting were in-house wines, which were under £5. And to be honest, it really is more about how the winemaker, or quality versus price. I mean, I've spent 20 quid on a bottle of wine and been really upset by the balance and all of that. And also, you know, it is, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one, because without tasting the wine, you know, it's hard to gauge the quality. But also with the price points, it's usually down to the winemaking, where the vineyard is, how expensive the land is, the winemaking, how they grow the grapes, the winemaking techniques, the labor, everything. And that usually falls into how much we pay at the end of the line. But that doesn't mean any of the wines are less quality or better quality, because I've had some fantastic reds at like £4.50 from Lidl.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest misconception, I think, because people always say never pick the first wine on the list. But I guess that's thrown out the window now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah. So has anybody got any of their favorite sort of lockdown meals that they want to have a little pairing with?
I'm sure somebody will write in. Let me think. Something that I've been eating a lot of, which isn't very good for me, is literally my sourdough breakfast, and I've just been very inventive with the toppings. So like mozzarella with really lovely olive oil. I've been having that quite a bit. But I don't know. I mean, I'm talking breakfast. My breakfasts are usually like lunchtime, by the way, FYI.
Wine is
I was
going
going to
to
say
be your
breakfast.
No,
I
but
would say champagne is the breakfast sort of wine.
I've been having lunch at like 5 p.m. That's my lunch. It's, yeah, because we've been so crazy busy at the moment. So like all of my meals are a bit out of whack, to be honest with you. But yeah, my sourdough breakfast / lunches are normally kind of a staple for me at the moment. I don't think I've got a generic dinner apart from pasta. Pasta seems to be the one, but I guess that would vary on what you're putting in the pasta in terms of recommending a pairing, wouldn't it? What would you say, Steph?
Yes, definitely. So like it really depends, because if you've got like a tuna with like say a tomato sauce or like a spag bog, you definitely want to go a little bit more red wine, a little bit fuller, like a Merlot from Chile, or once again a Bordeaux blend. But if you are keeping it very simple, like a pesto pasta, which is delicious, then you want something a little bit more fragrant, like the Gruners or the Rieslings again. But yeah, so it really depends on what you are putting on your, your bread or your pasta. It is an interesting one, because without tasting everything, I mean, what I've done in the past is you actually taste the full menu and then you taste like a bunch of wines with everything.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun.
I love it.
Steph, I've got a really, really important question. So talking of food, tonight I'm going on a hen do because I should be in Tenerife right now, but I'm actually in Yorkshire in my bedroom. But I've got a lot of salty snacks to have tonight. I've got crisps, I've got nuts, I've got chicken balls. What wine should I be drinking, or any kind of alcohol should I be drinking with my very salty selection of food tonight?
That is a very fair question. I mean, the salt in it. So like I said earlier, if you do have that sort of salty flavor, you do want something a little bit more. You want something that can hold up that flavor, because the salt it is sort of a it enhances flavors, doesn't it, when we put it in food. So I would definitely say something a little bit more tannic, because that'll make the tannin seem really soft and smooth and super silky. So a lovely, I mean, I would go a lovely little Grenache sort of red wine, something a little sexy, really.
Like me.
I love it. Steph, we've got so many people writing in with their meal selections, so I'm gonna just fire loads at you if you're ready. Thai green curry. What would you say? Oh, and also a veggie pad Thai, if you could marry the two. Okay, so say Thai cuisine-ish.
Thai cuisine. Definitely, we want the fruity and we want the sweet and we want that sort of thing. So I'd say, once again, I keep going on about Gewürztraminer and Grüne Veltliner and Rieslings.
My favorite.
Those sorts of flavor profiles. For definite. But I mean, you could also do like the IPAs, the lagers, American Pale Ale even as well with those, I would recommend.
Awesome. We've also got any recommendations on a dryer. Honestly, I cannot pronounce this, but I will try. Gewürztraminer. That's really bad, isn't it?
No, that was good. Well done.
That's a very long wine word.
Gewürztraminer. Yeah. So I usually I sort of just say Gewürz.
There you go.
Because it's a lot easier. Because there is no hope in me spelling that one either. A drier style Gewürz, I mean, you really would want something quite young and fresh, with a little bit of maybe a higher alcohol if you look at the back, because as we've learned in the fermentation process from Toast Beer, David Sims, and Leona from What Is Wine, that the yeast eats the sugar. So if you're looking for a slightly dry style, if it does have that little bit of a higher alcohol content, that could be an indication that it is that little bit of a dry style.
We've got a good one from Nick. How about fish and chips?
I already did this one. It's one I said earlier. So a lovely fish and chips. Now, because of the batter, it is quite rich and it can be quite, quite filling. So once again, you do want that wine, that really nice acidity that sort of cleans your palate. So I'd say I've got three little options here. I've got a Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, if you're into the New Zealand stuff, that's great. I'm more into the Sancerre, so that's where I would go. A Pinot Grigio, even, or even a Vino Verde, because then you've got a little bit of the lightness, and you're not overpowering the delicate flavor of the fish or the chips at all, because that's another thing you've got to be really careful of. If you do have a little bit of a delicate dish, you don't want to give like this massive big Aussie Shiraz and be like, yeah, smack it in the face with it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Alice has also asked, what about risotto, mushroom or seafood? What would you recommend for those?
So for the cooking, I mean, David may poo-poo me, but for the cooking of it, definitely a bit of white wine in there, a good quality white wine. And for actually eating, if it's a mushroom one, I would go for a, because it's got that real nice umami sort of jazziness to it. So I'd go like a Pinot Noir or maybe a Cab Sauv, a slightly lighter one. But then for the seafood, I would go a Picpoul de Pinet, I would say, because that will really lift it up and not overpower the seafood.
I've got a really funny one here, Steph. Thanks for that. So I think David, very much like me, is probably having his breakfast at lunchtimes because he's asked what would go with a full English breakfast.
Oh, David, that's a great one. Wine-wise, I would probably be tempted to say a champagne because I love a champagne at breakfast time. A Bloody Mary is always a good option too because it's a meal in a glass as well at breakfast. But for the non-wine drinkers out there, I would say even like a lighter lager would go really, really, really well with that.
Well, we've got tons of questions here for you, Steph. So as asparagus and other greens, this is from Noodle Nix. So as asparagus and other greens are in season, but tough to pair with, what would you suggest?
Oh, Noodle, that's a tough one. Asparagus is always about as hard as artichokes. They sort of play these weird sort of tricks on your palate and make things taste a little bit odd. Now with asparagus, I would definitely say a Sauvignon Blanc again, because it's got that freshness and that greenness to it. If you wanted something that was complementary, that sort of went the other side, but is still a white wine, I would maybe say like a Cremant de Bourgogne, where you have got a little bit of roundness to it and the bubbles, because it's Cremant is the same as Champagne, but just not from the Champagne region. So you'd have a little bit of those bubbles and a little bit of like jazz to go with the asparagus.
Awesome. We've got a really good question here. I don't know who sent it in, but it's two-parter. What wine would you recommend with salmon? And also, is there a difference in wine you would use for cooking? Would you use cheap wine rather than the more expensive?
I like that question.
Yeah, query, isn't it? It's a really common query. Like, what should you use? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll tackle the salmon one first. I mean, once again, it depends on what you are pairing with it. If you're going to have a slightly lighter red wine, if it's a bit of a bigger sort of flavor profile in the sauces or the accompaniments. But as a fish, like say, if it's just like the salmon, like we're talking sushi, I would say a cheeky little orange wine would go quite nicely with it.
Oh, nice.
Love an orange wine. And then tackle the question around what wine you should put in your food. I've always been a big believer in, if you put it in your food and you don't drink it, or you won't drink it, that's not right, because you're not treating your base ingredients well enough. Because obviously your base ingredients, whereas all the flavor comes from, and if you're putting wine in it, that's one of your base ingredients, so it has, you would have to be able to drink it as well. Sure. So I usually drink a glass alongside whatever I'm putting in.
Good plan.
I do that also, by the way. I think that's Matt said, is there a reason why my palate would prefer French white wine more than the other world whites? Is there something specific with French wine that would make it taste different to me? I've found this as well sometimes, Steph, to be fair.
Yeah, and this is something that I've had many discussions with a lot of other people about as well. And from what I've found is it's down to even memories. Like I'm a big fan of certain South African wines. Like I'm quite traditional in my South African wine palette, whereas I know one of my friends, Nicolia, she's a bit more out there and she likes the experimental stuff down there. So it's often what you've sort of found as a child or what memory you have of certain wines and that kind of thing as well. I don't think it's anything around the particular area per se, more around what you're used to and what your palate sort of enjoys.
Cool. Alice has asked, can you spell a few of those less common wine names for us so we can watch out for them?
Oh dear, which ones?
It might have been the English reds. We've had so many questions through, so sorry guys if there's any that we haven't got to, but there's loads still coming through. We'll try our best to get back to you all individually after the webcast, but I think probably the red ones, Steph.
So what I probably will do is I'll add that to like a recipe card, and then attach it to the YouTube for so we can all see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Perfect.
And last question. Oh gosh, which one to pick? There's so many. I would say to finish on a high. Where is it? What would you go for with dessert, please? So question would be, would you always go for dessert wine, or what could you pair with dessert at home?
No, okay. So, I mean, you don't always have to go with a dessert wine. You could go for a little cheeky cocktail, like a sours or something like that if you're having a fruity dessert. If it's a real rich chocolatey dessert, you can have a port, or even just stick with a little red wine. The only thing is you've got to be careful because the sugar will make the wines taste quite tart. So whatever you're trying to match is just, be careful because it can make them quite a bit more tart. But no, I think, Sonia, maybe one of our shake-along cocktails can be a dessert cocktail.
There you go. That's a good idea. Thanks, Steph.
Perfect. That's everything from us, isn't it? So, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope you will join us on Monday to learn all about gut health with Adrian from Real Kombucha and Luxie. For more information about our program, please go to the RA Group website at www.ragroup.co.uk/news to download the broadcast links. Meanwhile, if you have any suggestions or questions, please email gavin.goody@ragroup.co.uk. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. Have a fantastic weekend. And why not come up with some cool food and drink pairings and share with us on social media. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.